going.
Hi, I'm Blair, and I'm here at Blair House in Grand Lake on September 5th of 2015, and real happy to be here.
How did you first come to Grand Lake?
Well, my first wife, whose name was Sally Tappan, her folks had a home in Grand Lake, and when I met Sally, after a year or so, I came to visit her in Grand Lake, and the first place that I saw her when I came to visit was at the drugstore run by
Jeff Snyder?
Jeff Snyder, excuse me, Jeff Snyder, and where Sally worked during the summer. And anyway, they had a home at the east end of the lake, which just this year was torn down, was owned by the McKistries, and has been torn down, and a new house is now under construction. But the Tappan's home was designed by a Topeka architect and was built in the late 50s by Mac Rusk. And so when I first came to Grand Lake, and it was 1960, I believe, I met Mac Rusk. That's for the first time. So I knew Mac for all these years. We became really close friends, like so many people did of Dear Mac. So, and their whole family.
Do I remember that you were quite a water skier? Is that what you did?
No, Sally was.
Okay.
Sally was a water skier.
Wasn't there an event on water skis with you? Weren't you involved in an accident, or she was, or
no?
Something?
She was over in the islands at Shadow Mountain when she was a teenager. They were skiing between the islands and double skiing, and she fell, and the other skier went over the top of her and cut her head. I don't think it was as serious as all that, but there was a lot of bleeding on the head, you know. So, but I think that might be what you're thinking. I don't know of any other accident they had. But she and Kathy Bohannon Kramer were great friends, and they skied every single day. And behind Kathy Bohannon's Big Bow, they called it. In fact, it's still up here. I think it's parked over across from the theater.
What kind of boat is Big Bow?
It was Chris Craft, I think. Just, you know, would probably been of the sometime in the 50s, vintage.
What did you think of Grand Lake when you first came here from Topeka?
Well, I thought it was beautiful because I was raised in San Francisco Bay Area, and as a kid, I went to Lake Tahoe every summer with friends who owned a home there, and so this was like, you know, being able to do something you dream about being able to do if you've had the experience as a child.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then Sally passed away.
Yeah, she
up here, or you had been up here?
Well, no, we visited here while she was seriously ill with cancer, and then she passed away about a month after that in 1979. She was 38.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you continued to come to Grand Lake? You had two daughters.
Yes, two daughters with Sally, Amy, Blair, who is now married to Bernie Dvorak, and they own a home, the first home on the north side of Point Park, and they have twin boys, and who are 4, and a daughter who is 6. And then Shelley, who lives in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, and has a couple of children with her husband Jeff.
And at what point did you move?
We started coming here more regularly on vacations in the early 70s, when we finally had time to take a vacation. And the Salisburys, also from Topeka, John and Alicia Salisbury, and their children, Jess and Margaret, would come over from the Boulder area where they had a place, and sort of vacation with us. And we decided that since we were doing that for a few years in a row, that we might as well start looking, and maybe we could buy a property together. And so we looked at a lot of homes on the lake, and this house suddenly came for sale, and so we made an offer on it, and fortunately were able to buy it in 1974, and we paid a huge sum of $65,000 for it. And John and I wondered, well, where are we going to get the money to pay for it now that we've negotiated a deal? Anyway, we owned it together until 1980 or 1981, and the Salisburys built their home just down the street. And then subsequent to that, we've added on to the house. It's been a perpetual project for 41 years.
Who did you buy this house from?
We bought it from some people by the name of Kearns, and he had been an executive with the railroad, and I can't remember which railroad it was, but they were quite elderly and could no longer be in the mountains, and so they went to California from here, and I never heard from them.
Did you buy it furnished, and was there a
bought
boat?
it
And
completely furnished. I still have some garden hose that is theirs, and a whole shop full of tools, and so every once in a while we pick up something around here that is from the Kearnses. The house was built in 1960. It had about 1,200 square feet. I think we've got about 4,200 square feet here now. But it's been a project of great joy for our family. And then after I was married to Sally, after she died, then I married Rebecca Richardson, and we had a daughter named Catherine, and she lives in Denver, and is married to an Irishman, Dara Mulready, and we're very proud of them. They're doing well.
what do you do for fun in Grand Lake? What did you do at the beginning, and what do you do now? I mean, what is, when you say you vacation in Grand Lake, what does that look like for you?
Well, I don't fish, and I don't take long hikes, and I don't play golf. So what we do is work around our home and take care of it, and it takes a lot of care. And for so many years, we were only here in the summertime for maybe 2 weeks, and then another 2 weeks, maybe a total of 4 weeks in the summer or fall. And so that's not a lot of time if you have to take care of a place. Well, you do that, but we enjoyed doing that. And going out to dinner, and of course going to the theater here, and all of the kind of relaxing things that people do. Sit around and read books and walk. We don't hike, but we walk a lot. And enjoy our friends at the yacht club, and take cruises on the lake. The cocktail cruise is sort of habitual for us every evening, and we enjoy that.
Tell us about your wedding, your marriage to Maris on a boat.
Oh, yeah, we had a wonderful wedding, and it was 24 years ago, and we sent out invitations to our friends in Grand Lake and some of our friends from Kansas, and the invitation said, among other things, BYOB, bring your own boat. And we got married on a pontoon boat in the middle of the lake. So we cruised out to the middle. Jock Mitchell was the driver of the boat. Don Chubb was the officiant at our wedding. And it was quite spectacular. It rained all day, and we were planning on having this reception in our lakeside yard, and but it was raining and raining and raining, and I almost called the yacht club and said, we have to move the wedding to the yacht club. And about half an hour before the wedding, Jock Mitchell was coming through Granby on his way to Grand Lake, hurrying because he knew he was running a little late, and he said, don't worry, it's not going to be raining long, it's clear in Granby, so you don't move the wedding to the yacht club. So we didn't, and it turned out it was an absolutely spectacularly beautiful evening, and everything went well, and we had all these boats surrounding the pontoon boat, and we threw champagne bottles to each one of the boats out there, and had our wedding, and everybody had champagne, and then we had a reception here at the house. It was a lot of fun.
Whose idea was that?
Oh, Maris and I decided we wanted to do something like that, so I'm not sure who had the exact idea.
Now, you had a neighbor named Annie Weaver back in the day. What was Annie like?
Oh, Annie was unbelievable. Annie was a fixture at Grand Lake, and we were very fortunate, we felt, to have her as a neighbor because she was here all the time, and we felt comfortable having a full-time person here since we weren't here a lot. But when we were here, she was just delightful. She would, of course, Annie talked all the time, and she never stopped talking. And you could be in the shower, and she'd walk in the door, and she'd just walk in and out whenever she wanted to, and start yelling and talking. And she was just a character, but she was as nice a person as could be, and she would always be watching out on the lake if there was anything going on that anybody needed help at all. She would be out there helping, and she did win the first sportsman award given by the yacht club annually now, but she won the first one, and I can't remember when that was, but it would have been in the late 70s or early 80s, I suppose. But she was liked by all in spite of her eccentricities.
When did she leave Grand Lake?
I don't know. I'd say about 15 years ago, so probably in around 1990. And she wanted to be closer to San Francisco, where her daughter was. So she wound up, as far as I know, living in Reno, Nevada.
Now, I can remember some pretty dramatic sailboat rescues with Annie literally on the bow of her boat. Do you remember any of those episodes?
Well,
particularly?
I remember that they happened, you know, but I don't specifically remember any that I could tell about.
Who particularly became friends in the yacht club to you? You mentioned Mac Rusk.
Well, the Rusks and the Mitchells, and we had a whole contingency here from Kansas, from Topeka, of course, the Chubb family, the entire Chubb family, and the Salisburys, of course. And but most of our friends on the lake were people from the Denver Front Range area that we have met over the years. We have lots of friends up here, and then when I developed the project called The Shores of Shadow Mountain, that became a whole new area of friendships for us. We have about 5 or 6 couples that live there permanently who have become good friends of ours also, so we have that group.
Do you still have a home over there, Ben?
No, we have, well, we don't have a home. We have a speculative house that we have built there as the developer of the project, and it's still for sale right now. Mm-hmm. But we only have 5 lots left in the shores, so we're just selling them slowly.
Mm-hmm. One thing, you have the distinction of having that beautiful rock out there in the lake. You have any good stories about that?
And well, yeah. Unfortunately, or fortunately, as the case may be, nobody claims ownership or any direction over Grand Lake. Not the city, the county, the Park Service, the National Park, or the state of Colorado. Nobody will claim jurisdiction, and as a result, there are no official markers on the rocks that are in Grand Lake. And we have one of the most prominent ones right out from the middle of our lot, and so there's been kind of a problem over the years on who's going to mark that. Now, Annie Weaver used to put a milk bottle out there every year, and so when Annie was here, we didn't worry about it much because she would always put that milk bottle out there. And then when she left, we started marking it, and then our lawyer told us, well, if you do that and the marker's gone, you could be liable because you didn't maintain it out there. And so for a while we stopped marking the rock, and when it wasn't marked, the boats would hit it, and you know, it was kind of almost entertaining because, I mean, I hate to say that, but it was because we could sort of bet as to whether or not that boat was going to hit the rock or not. Well, we decided that that was kind of foolish of us and that we should start marking it. But the big problem with marking it is what you mark it with. If you mark it with a big rubber tube that says rock on it and then has chub on one side of it, because we found that on the lake one time. If you mark it with a usable marker, people just go up to it and think they've found a new marker, and they hit the rock, and or found something for them to use themselves, and they hit the rock with it. So we've had different markers from time to time, but then they blow away, or somebody takes it, and then there's a period of time when it's not marked. So we've tried to get the boat service to understand that it's to their advantage if they would mark the rock every year, but they don't. And so we are still marking it when we can, but like I say, it's not marked all the time.
A claret bottle?
The Clorox bottle.
Oh, a Clorox bottle.
She
Okay.
painted it gold one year, and people thought it was trash, so they'd hit the rock trying to get the trash out of it.
I noticed I was at the Headwaters Marina last week, and they have a huge map right in front of the cash register, and they've marked an area in front of your place that says "Do not enter," which is helpful,
Yes.
but I've noticed people don't pay attention to
Yeah.
that.
Well, and there's a rock between our boathouse and the James boathouse also. It's in a direct line between the ends of the boathouses. And it's out from the south lot line of the Dvorak's. So I know exactly where it is, but people are still hitting that one too. I hit it once, that's why I know where it is. So,
I hit it last summer.
yeah, and Maris, would you please stop that? It's very distracting, and I can't think of what I want to say.
Now, does the fireplace draw?
Oh, well,
Does the
when I was,
fireplace draw?
well, it does now because we converted it to a gas fireplace. But when we bought the house, it was quite interesting. John and I came over, and I was negotiating the contract since I'm the realtor of the two of us, and the Kearnses were both sitting in the living room with us, and there was black all over the chimney, on the exterior of the chimney, so I knew that there was something wrong with the fireplace. So I just asked, I said, well now, Mr. Kearns and Mrs. Kearns, does the fireplace work well? Does it draw well? And they said, oh yes, there's nothing wrong with the fireplace. Well, I just let that go. Because we were going to buy it whether the fireplace drew or not. But in order for the fireplace to work, when you started it up, you needed to open up a door in order to get enough draft for it.
You mean a house door?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so in the middle of winter, when it was 5 below out, even, or whatever, you open the door a little bit when you wanted to start the fire.
Was this house winterized from the beginning?
Yes,
Okay,
Yes.
so you've come up at different seasons
yes.
the whole time.
Yeah, and we have city water.
Do you have a favorite time of year up here?
September, probably.
Because
Yeah, because it's just beautiful, and it's not crowded. Of course, it's never really all that crowded in Grand Lake as far as I'm concerned, but it's quiet and very pretty and sunny, usually sunny during the day and crispy in the morning, beautiful in the evenings. So we just like it.
how much of the year do you spend here now?
Probably a total of about 5 or 6 months, and then we live in Denver. We moved from Topeka to Denver 2 years ago.
Do you maintain an apartment or anything in Topeka?
No.
What was I gonna ask you? Tell us a little bit about your career. You've ended up, being able to do it around here too,
Yeah.
right? So,
I was, I'm an attorney by education, and I am a realtor by practice and real estate developer. I was a Coldwell banker. I had the Coldwell Banker franchise in Topeka for 30 years, and also did development work, residential and commercial, and office buildings and so on in Topeka primarily. And then when I sold the company in 1998, I came out here and did some developing here with lakefront property, the shores of Shadow Mountain being the main development, which is 54 lots on the south shore of Shadow Mountain Lake. Very, very nice project. We have 8 lakefront lots there, and total, as I say, a total of 54 lots.
how did the pine beetle epidemic affect you with that development over there? I mean, it's one thing to have one house, that we're dealing with, but
Well, at the time that we started the project, the pine beetle started coming in slowly, and by the time, 3 or 4 years into the development, it was, the pine beetles were thick and killing the trees, and we had a lot of trees in the shores, and so we just went in and thinned out the forests, which meant that we cut down at least 100,000 trees in the shores. And that sounds really bad, but the lodgepole pine forest can grow too thick. And these were mostly smaller, well, a lot of them were smaller trees, too crowded together. And of course, so the views from the shore weren't as good until you cut some trees down. Well, cutting as many of the trees down as we ultimately had to cut down was a huge advantage to us, and not a disadvantage, because it opened up all the views from the shores on all the way down Shadow Mountain Lake toward Grand Lake, and it just made beautiful, beautiful home sites out of not only the lakefront lots, but the lots up on the ridge and so on and so forth. And so, 'tis an ill wind that blows no good. We wouldn't want the pine beetle, but if it came and it had some advantages.
how about
for
this
us.
lot here?
And
Did you lose?
we took all of the trees out of our from the house to the shore on this lot, probably about 7 or 8 years ago, because we knew the pine beetle was coming, and the trees were probably 100 years old, and they only lived somewhere between 100 and 120 years anyway, and we just decided to bite the bullet and take them all down. And the second we did that, we were so happy that we did. We have sunshine, we have a clear view of the lake, and we were able to replace the trees then with different varieties of trees and place them where we wanted to, so that they wouldn't be right in the middle of our view. So I think if you take advantage of things, why, you can make it lemon turn out to be pretty good.
Speaking of taking advantage of things, as you add on to this home and decorate and that sort of thing, what are your goals? What are particular areas that are important to you? What's important to you in this house?
Oh, I don't know. We just we didn't have any centralized plan from the beginning. Each one of the additions was an addition done by itself, which we thought would be the last addition to the house. In 1980, we added a master bedroom and bath, and after that we remodeled the kitchen and the laundry room area, and after that we remodeled the old bedroom areas and added a den or offices for ourselves, and we thought, well, we're definitely done. And then we sat around one day thinking about, gee, it'd be nice to expand to over the garage and between the garage and the house, and so we did that. And now we've expanded all we can expand. There's no more area that we would be allowed to expand.
You
to.
have that on record. We've heard you say that.
Yes.
So.
Oh, we could go up a little more. But other than that, why, we're done.
I'm intrigued, having myself left Topeka a long time ago.
Yeah.
What is it like to, both you and Maris are from Topeka, right? You're a native. To leave a place like that where you have those roots and entirely set yourself down somewhere else. Was that a difficult thing? What was involved in that transition?
Well, the only difficult part, of course, is leaving the friendships you've had. Maris lived there all of her life so far, and I lived there for 50 years. And so we had a lot of friends, and we were active in the community and so on. But all of our families left or were gone, and so we decided it would be time to move to Denver and be closer to family and be close to Grand Lake, where we wanted to spend at least half the time. So while it was difficult leaving friends, it was not hard for me to leave Topeka after 50 years. I was very active in the community. When I arrived in Topeka in 1962, the population was 165,000 approximately. When I left 50 years later, it was only 175,000. And while it was a good place for me to have a business and small business and so on and so forth, it was a most frustrating experience being in a community that did not grow and lacked a lot of things that other communities lack, like the excitement of a larger area like Denver that's growing and so on and so forth. On the other hand, there are a lot of advantages to living in a town like Topeka that doesn't necessarily grow, but is peaceful and a good place to raise kids and so on and so forth. So, I don't know, it's mixed.
Father-in-law selling house? Is there a story there?
Oh, well, I mentioned that Sally's parents had built their home on Grand Lake in approximately 58 or 59 or 60. I'm not sure just when it was built. And then I met Sally and we got married in 1962, and in about 1963 or 64 I get this phone call at night. I don't know why I got the call and Sally didn't get it, but I got the call from her father, and he said, I just wanted to tell you that I sold the house in Grand Lake. And I said, excuse me? Will you say that again? He said, I sold the house in Grand Lake. And I said, well, you can't do that. I said, it's the only reason I married your daughter. She had this beautiful home in Grand Lake. And he laughed and said, well, I got an offer I simply could not refuse. And I said, well, since you brought it up, tell me what the offer was for and what you sold the house for. He said, I sold it for $35,000. And he said it was an offer I couldn't refuse. So I said, well, what'd you do with the money? He said, well, I went down to Garden of Gods and bought a lot. Imagine buying a lot in the Garden of Gods for $35,000, but he did. So that's the story of that.
How did Sally particularly feel about that?
Well, you know, actually it was probably fortunate because she had two sisters, and it wasn't a particularly large house, and we probably would have had all kinds of family feuds, and it probably caused us to buy this home eventually, and so that worked out just fine. But Sally, she didn't like the fact that they'd sold it, but what can you do? And that's fine.
Do you have any favorite story we've missed, Ben?
Oh, probably. My first trip to Grand Lake, or my second trip to Grand Lake, was by U.S. Highway 40 from San Francisco, and I was driving my Volkswagen Beetle, and arrived in Grand Lake at the first part of the summer, and knew I would have to have a job for the summer. So as I got to Lake Granby, I stopped in at a place called the Circle H Corral, and it was run at that time by Gertrude Hogue. And I just walked in and said, I wonder if you have any work. I'm looking for a summer job. And she said, why, of course, I need a dishwasher right now, and you can have a room in the basement, and so on, and I'll pay you $250 a month, and you get all your meals. And I said, well, that sounds fine, but if you don't mind, I'm going to go to Grand Lake and see what other possibilities there are, and I'll come back. And so within the next 2 hours, I had a total of 5 job offers. I remember one of them was at the lodge, but the other interesting one was that Don Negri, who owned the Pinecone Inn, wanted me to come to work there as a bar waiter. So, but I thought at the time that the best job would probably be working for Gertrude Hogue at the Circle H Corral, so I did. And I was there washing dishes for about 2 weeks, and during that 2-week time, I think we had 3 different fry cooks. She would hire them out of Denver. They'd come up and they'd be drunks, and they wouldn't be dependable, and she'd have to fire them. And after about 2, maybe 3 weeks, she came to me and said, this is just not working. She said, you're going to have to be a fry cook. And I said, well, I know how to fry an egg, but I'm not much of a fry cook. I don't know too much about it. She said, the chef will teach you. And so I became the fry cook at the Circle H for another probably 3 or 4 weeks. And then I decided that it would be better to be located right in Grand Lake, since Sally was going to be up here. And so I went to work for Don Negri at the Pinecone Inn as a bar waiter, and many of the people that I know in Grand Lake today were people that I served drinks to at the Pinecone Inn every Friday or Saturday night or in between times. And it was quite a place. They had a wonderful band during that summer, and I think for many summers.
What was the building like back then?
Well,
because it's not now what it was
It
then.
was a big round room with that round fireplace. And when you walked in, the bar was right to your right as you walked in. And the rest of it was just big, long tables and a bandstand. And so people would come in pretty large groups. And I always remember that your mind can do great things that you don't think it can do. For example, I would be able to take a drink order from 10 or 12 people at table number 1 and then do the same thing at table number 3 and table number 5 or whatever, and remember from the first time I took the order what everybody around the table was drinking, so all I had to do would be to go and say, do you want another round? And of course they'd always say yes, and then I'd bring them the exact drinks and then go to the next table and do the same thing. Now I couldn't possibly do that today, but I'm just amazed at what you can do when you have to. So that's my experience with working up here. Yeah, my only sailing story and sailing experience happened because, as I said, I was a friend of Mac Rusk's. And one day in the 70s, it was probably 75, 76, sometime like that, Mac calls me frantically about an hour or half an hour before the races were to start. And he sailed number 13 E-Scow. And he said, I desperately need a crew person. And I said, Mac, you know I don't sail. I've never sailed in a race. I can't be a crew person of any value to you at all. He said, well, the weather's going to be of such a nature today that we need the fifth man, and I've lost my fifth man, and we need the weight and ballast on the boat and so on and so forth. Would you please do it? Well, he was a friend, so even though I didn't want to, I agreed I would sail with him, and we had a most exciting race. It was one of those where the winds were blowing one way on one side of the lake and another way on the other side, and some boats would be stalled and others would be moving ahead. And to make a long story short, we were coming back toward the finish, which was at the yacht club, and we were sort of stalled out, and the other boats, we had been in first place, and then we stalled out, and the other boats went past us, and then they stalled out, and we caught the wind, and right at the last minute went over the finish line first. So I am one of the only people, if not the only yacht club member, who has a perfect record in sailing, because that was my first and my last race, and we won. And so I will go down in history as never having lost in a race on Grand Lake. And of course we enjoyed all the activities at the yacht club, the barbecues. We participated for many, many years in Regatta Week quite heavily on different committees, but our favorite committee, which we were on probably 5 times and headed at least one, was the entertainment committee. And in those days we actually put on really funny musical type productions, and of course we made sure we starred in them ourselves, and that was a lot of fun. It was really a lot of fun. Karen Fry and Mrs. Murray playing the piano for us, and one time I was Johnny Carson, and it's hard to remember, but I still have the words to a lot of the old songs that we did, and I'll dig those out and make a copy of them and send them to you, because they're words to familiar songs, but you know, rewritten words to fit the yacht club.
What span of years were those, Ben, when you were involved in those productions?
Late 70s, early 80s, I would say.
It's too bad that people weren't doing video back then, weren't thinking to save those, you know, those productions too.
Yeah, they're just, the videos, cameras were this big, and, you know, people just didn't do that as much. But yeah, it would be fun to
I
have
seem
them.
to remember, weren't you all very active Venetian night float
Yeah, we
people
did a lot
too
of
back in the day?
Venetian night floats, and we usually did them with the Salisburys. And my favorite one, the theme for the Venetian night and for entertainment week, or regatta week, was Grand Lake at the movies, or something to that effect. And so we were thinking about, well, what can we do to depict a movie, well, on a boat and so on. So we built the float, and we had up in our rafters in the boathouse an old baby crib. And there was a movie called Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. So we did a float called Whatever Happened to Baby John. And we dressed John Salisbury quite lightly in only a diaper made of sheet, and put John Salisbury in the crib and made a sign, Whatever Happened to Baby John, and that was our float. I think we won the #1 float at that one, and that would have been, what, 20 years ago or whatever. And then during 1976, which was the 200th anniversary of our country, of course, and the theme was, 1776 to 1976 or whatever, and so our float, it was also the year that Jimmy Carter was running for president, and he was a peanut farmer, and so we dressed John Salisbury up as George Washington and had him throwing peanuts to the crowd in the yacht club. But we did pretty well in that regatta week parade too. So.
Have you ever lost a dog overboard?
Yes. Fergie, who was famous because he was the builder dog of the week at the shores one time. Or in fact, Fergie was a she, but I always had trouble with that because she looked like she was such a great-looking dog physically. And I thought, boy,
What breed
this
of-
was
what
like
breed of dog?
like a boy dog, but well, she was a mixture of German Shepherd type dog, great dog. And when she was a puppy, I was watching the races, and I had Fergie in the boat, and all of a sudden I looked back, and Fergie was no longer in the boat. I looked a little further back, and there Fergie was swimming, trying to keep up with the boat. Fortunately, I wasn't going very fast. Anyway, I was able to turn around and get pick Fergie back up. But when Fergie and I would walk the shores of Shadow Mountain before it was developed and plan out what, how I was going to develop that project, every time I'd go over there, I'd take Fergie with me, and Fergie would run around, and every time she would bring me a fresh bone. And so we knew that there was a mountain lion at the shores. We never saw it. We did see some tracks, but we never saw the mountain lion. And then I read an article in the paper that said, if you're walking with your dog in the forest and the mountains, keep your dog on a leash, because if it's running around and it encounters a mountain lion, you know what's going to happen. The dog's going to run back to you, and guess who's going to be following the dog? So I learned at that point not to let her just run free like that, and kept her on a leash after that.
Okay.
That's probably about enough for me, isn't it? There are just so many, there are a lot of memories. I mean, Jock and Nancy Mitchell were good friends of ours. And
Do you have any specific memories? We're still running.
Yeah.
Since we won't be able to interview Jock, do you
Yeah.
have any particular memories?
Well, I have great fondness for Jock, and he was a huge factor in the long-term development of the yacht club, because he was a good real estate lawyer, and he helped with the purchase of the ground behind the yacht club and the exchange of land with the city to make the yacht club physically what it's become today. And there were a lot of people involved in that. He's not the only person, but he was certainly a key person in that. We enjoyed our social life with Jock and Nancy, and he was just an interesting person. And so when I developed the shores, I hired him to be my attorney to help with all of the planning and legal work that went on there, and he did a fabulous job of that, and as I said, helped in our wedding and so on and so forth. And so we miss Jock. Every year we miss Jock and Nancy, of course.
Dr. Munn. Dr. Munn.
Dr. Munn?
Oh, Dr. Munn. Oh, Jim Munn was a marvelous character. For people that remember Dr. Munn, I'm sure everybody liked Jim Munn. He was an adventurist, and he lived on the south end of the lake. The family still owns the home, and but Jim was divorced and single all the time that I knew him, and had a new girlfriend. It seemed like every year, and that was always interesting to the members of the yacht club to meet his new girlfriend. And on one occasion, Jock Mitchell planned a sailing trip in the Caribbean, and Jim Munn and one of his lady friends were invited, along with Maris and myself, and Jock and Nancy, and we had a wonderful week on a sailboat in the Caribbean, and of course all of the old stories that Jock and Jim Munn had were just completely entertaining. And I wish I could tell all those stories, but we don't have time.
Are there
time
any
for that.
Grand Lake related stories that you can tell? that those two guys would have been telling or involved in?
Well, I think all those stories about Jim Munn are in one way or another, sort of Grand Lake related, but I'm not a particularly good storyteller, so I'm not going to tell any of the stories except to tell you that he was a real character. You know, he held the record in Colorado for soaring. He soared as high as, I think, 45,000 feet, and he would talk about when you get up in those altitudes in a soaring airplane, you actually pass out, and hope that you come out of being passed out as you come down, and which apparently he always did, because that's not the way he passed away. And so he did that, and he was also a really good sailor and a veterinarian. There are a lot of funny stories about that he tells about being a vet and so on. So, but he's just one of the many characters on Grand Lake. And of course, another good friendship we have is with the Lynch family, and Jane and Jim Lynch are very good friends of ours, and we enjoy them and their entire family, and they only live a couple of doors from us and next to our daughter and her husband Bernie. So that should wrap it up.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ben.